Well, growing up and still today, I'm a little bit of a space nerd. This is a consequence of my father, who also, he got to watch the moon landing in class. Right? They wheeled out the TV on the cart, and he watched it in class. I didn't get to do that. The Challenger had already blown up. And anyway, so that being said, when Apollo 13 came out in the mid-'90s, we went and saw it several times. And also, I don't know if you remember, but at the time McDonald's had some deal with Apollo 13 with the movie studio. And you could go and get a little rocket ship in 3 parts, a little Saturn V rocket, and the Pogs. You remember these little cardboard toy things? They were little things, and then you had a plastic or a metal thing, and you slammed it down. Well, they had Apollo 13 themed Pogs with all scenes from the movie and so forth. And that was the most times that my dad ever took us to McDonald's, because he wanted all of those things, so we just had to keep going and getting Happy Meals or whatever it was. All right, so this is part of my family life. It's part of me. Just fascination and enjoyment of that time period. And so beyond, after Apollo 13, Tom Hanks went on and he produced and hosted another series called From the Earth to the Moon. It was an HBO miniseries. Each episode is focused on one of the Apollo missions before getting to the landing, and then also the last few afterwards. Actually, there were more afterwards. And so each one has this. And there's one episode for Apollo 7. Apollo 7 was the second manned space flight for the Apollo program. Apollo 1, if you remember, was a tragedy. During a test, the astronauts died in the cockpit. When there was a fire, they couldn't get the door open, and they died before they even lifted off. It was during a test on the launching pad. And so they had a few unmanned missions in between. So Apollo 7, though, is the next mission with people actually flying in space. And so there was a lot riding on this one. Of course, certain people in government wanted to come after NASA's budget, which was substantial, still is. So there was a lot going on. And so NASA knew that they had to get it right. They had to do it right. They had to make sure that there were no failures. And so they have their crew, and the commander of that crew was a man, Wally Schirra, who apparently had a bit of a temper about some things, and since he knew how much was riding on this, he made sure that he got his way about how things needed to go. And one of the things he was very clear about is that they needed to have, for their pad leader, the leader of the people who managed the people on the launch pad, who got the astronauts into the capsule, who made sure that everything was working right, and they were the ones in charge if there was an emergency. They had to get the guy that he knew, that had the most experience, that knew what he was doing. And his name was Gunther Wendt, W-E-N-D-T. Good German name. So in this show, From the Earth to the Moon, this particular episode is like a documentary, and so you see an actor portraying Gunther. And they come up and they ask him, you've got all this experience, and you're in light of Apollo 1, what are you doing to make sure that this one goes off right, that there's no problems? His response is to say, well, we drill and we drill and we drill again until we can do it in our sleep. And then we get up and we do it some more. And we drill again. The way that they were planning to prepare for the unexpected was to practice, to train, to do it again and again and again, and do it in such a way that it was just second nature, that they knew what they were doing. They knew how to respond in emergencies. They knew when crises came what was going to do to prevent it or to get through it. And so they came up with all these different drills for as many eventualities as possible. The particular scene, I remember they're drilling something as if the capsule, the rocket was about to explode. Something went wrong with the fuel line or whatever. And so they all rush out of the capsule, and then they get on a zip line, and they go from this, giant rocket. They zip line all the way down and, fall down. I think it seems like a lot of fun to me, but, I'm way past the time where I could be an astronaut. It's just, I don't know. Anyway. Though we are unlikely, I think, to be in such high-stress situations as the Apollo program, we still find ourselves practicing for crises, for emergencies. We grow up in school doing fire drills and tornado drills. Stop, drop, and roll. Everybody knows how to do that. Tornado drills have changed a little bit. When I was in school, you'd go out into the hallway of your cinder brick building and you put a book over your head. And I guess that was enough. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. We spend time in driver's ed, not just learning, but also driving in a test course. I have a friend, his dad liked to get him prepared for paying attention. And so when he was out driving with his dad would sit in the passenger seat and say, "What do you see? What do you see? What do you see? What do you see?" Just constantly getting at him. He's trying to get him prepared. He's practicing. What do you see? What's the crisis? How are you ready for these things? When I was working at Samaritan Ministries as a not-for-profit, I was put in, not in charge, but alongside the one in charge to coordinate our emergency response team. And so we had meetings, we thought of all the possibilities. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? We had 2 buildings. What if there's at one building but not at the other? And what is this problem? Is it a fire? We thought of all these possibilities. We came up with plans for them, and then we practiced them. And not only did we practice them, we put them on the schedule for everybody to practice and train and prepare. Because when the crisis came, we needed to be ready. Because we didn't know when it would happen. You never know when a crisis is going to happen. Jesus warns us that his return, his advent, will be sudden. And if we're not careful, it also will be a crisis. Jesus warns that he will come suddenly as a thief in the night, or as those who were before Noah's flood, just going about their day, eating, drinking, getting married, and then all of a sudden, here's this flood. We do not know the hour. We do not know the day when Christ will return, and so he tells us to be ready, to prepare, to train for his return. His return will be a crisis because in that time he will come not as a babe but in judgment, revealing our deeds to us, hidden and known, and revealing our hearts to ourselves. And so in preparation for this coming, we are called to prepare, to train, to drill. That when Christ does indeed come, he will find us ready. But then, what then should we be doing to prepare for Christ's coming? What is it that we are supposed to be about? What's our drill? What's our practice? Well, I might actually ask the question a different way. When Christ returns, what is it that you'd like to show him that you were doing? What is it that you would like him to find you up to? And all of a sudden, there he is. Now, we could talk about lots of things, but in general terms, something like this: that we are being his disciples, that we are walking in his ways, we are practicing faith, hope, and charity, we are learning to love God and love our neighbor, that we are following him in the way of the cross, self-sacrificially offering ourselves to both God and our neighbor. Or, as we will come across later in the Gospel according to Matthew, that we are practicing the Beatitudes, the way that we are blessed by being poor in spirit, by learning to mourn, by being meek, hungering for righteousness, being merciful, pure in heart, being peacemakers, being persecuted for righteousness' sake, and being reviled for Jesus' name. The drill that we are to be doing is to be living and walking in the way of God. And so we drill, and we drill, and we drill, and we find times where we can sit down and show our love for God in our prayers, and we where we can find time to show our love for our neighbor through sitting and talking, through offering a hand in service, providing for a need that's been made known to us. We learn to practice faith, believing those things that he has taught us even when they don't make sense, trusting in hope that though we might not see all ends, that doesn't mean that the end is always dark. And learning to live a life of charity, of the love that is God's gift to us. And we do all of this, preparing, so that when God comes, when Christ returns, we can say, "Look, Lord, here is your life given back to you. Here, Lord, I have done these things." That he might welcome us in then to say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Amen.